The fact that you are is enough to know that, okay, if you're here to create something that's amazing.
Welcome to Letting Go and the Greatest Secret, where we explore the end of your suffering and the beginning of lasting happiness. I'm Hale Dwoskin, and today we'll be meeting Bob Doyle, who is a featured teacher along with me in Rhonda Byrne's The Secret. Bob has been teaching life by design principles for over 2 decades. His primary focus is teaching people how to utilize our brain's natural ability to change, so they can define and become the person they most want to be. How do you see the secret, the law of attraction, and the latest book, The Greatest Secret, which is more about just discovering the truth of who you are as awareness? Mm-hmm. How do they relate to each other? Or how do they complement each other?
When I look at The Greatest Secret, because of the sort of conversation I'm in right now with how I'm teaching and coaching, I'm seeing it more tactical, like that what we're really talking about is, gaining control to an extent, catching ourselves. Just this is to use like non-spiritual language, like,
oh, sure, use any language you want. Like, I don't have a preference.
Just so that, because I'm trying to reach everybody who may not even be spiritually inclined. It's just like learning to catch yourself when you're in a reaction mode based on our brain wiring, and then having a choice to choose a different way of being. And that's the essence of what I feel like this book is about. It's about becoming aware that you're bigger than this,
Yes.
But why that's pertinent with regards to the original Secret, which is, it's all the law of attraction and all the ideas around, vision boards and how to implement the law of attraction and different principles there. But ultimately, if a person succeeds with that or not, and of course we have seen results vary for people, it's going to be because at its core, they're brain wiring. They're just wired to process things differently. They make things mean different things, like where one person would say, oh, this means the universe doesn't want it for me. The other will just take it as feedback and take different action and get different results. So the skill set that people need is this becoming aware, the ability to become aware and realize that to a great degree, just reacting, they're running a program that they actually can take conscious control of.
Yeah, well said. Because most of us have relegated a huge part of our daily functioning and our entire lives actually to programming based on what was, and that has nothing to do with what is. So would you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. Because it all happened on autopilot. When we were children and our brains are forming and we're just as plasticky as we could be, we have no idea that we can evaluate information and assess it as to whether or not this is in alignment with who I truly would like to become. There's none of that. We just believe it all. We believe it all, and our brains are getting wired and getting wired and wired and wired. And so it just happens over the course of time unconsciously. And so by the time we're waking up to any of this and realizing, wait, there's a chance that we can change this, the networks are very strongly in place. And so when people, like watch The Secret or read they get excited about any kind of transformation like this, and then they try the techniques or whatever that they're hearing about, and it doesn't immediately happen, then they discount the whole thing. They have to realize that they're still ultimately up against some biology here. If they're going to hold different thoughts and different beliefs and be a different way as a result, their brain is going to have to change. They're being and getting the results based on how they've been programmed unconsciously. Now they can choose to take on doing it consciously, but just be prepared for it to take some time.
Oh, yeah. It's a process for most of us. I've worked with people where just they'll be focusing on something and an entire tendency that plagued them the whole life just drops away in an instant. But for most of us, what we need to do is put in the time. It takes a while to develop our ever decreasing sense of who we are. So sometimes it takes a while to start opening up to what's more authentic. So I really agree with that.
And this is why I love like any work around releasing, and particularly with a process like you use that's so simple, that doesn't take a lot of technique to it per se. But I've seen you do it, in groups, and it's it's so crazy how powerful it is and how quickly it can change. Like that's the kind of thing that can accelerate the wiring process, the
Yes, yes.
rewiring process. So there are shortcuts, and this is the great news for people who are waking up to this at this time, that it doesn't have to be so, it is going to be uncomfortable, especially if you don't have these kind of tools. It's going to be uncomfortable because you've reached the limits of your wiring, and just like everything you've learned that was worth learning, there's some discomfort when you learn to walk and talk, and the mistakes you made, all of that stuff. It's just a part of it. But somehow when it comes down to our own personal development and transformation, the industry has taught us that it'll be easy. It'll take 3 days, 7 days, 21 days, and it may, depending on your wiring. But, if you don't do it in their 7 days or 14 days, you turn it on yourself, or you say, okay, the program doesn't work, or I'm broken. And that thing that I alluded to before, which is I hear it all the time, is the universe doesn't want this for me. And to me, that is the most heartbreaking sentiment, to hear
Yes.
someone say that they've turned over the power to create the life they love to the universe, which they're a part of, and it's there. We're here for it. So that kind of programming it creates a lot of challenges too, because it creates real wiring.
No, I agree. I mean, again, what's weird is that there's a truth in that the universe and us are the same mechanism. And I believe it's a loving universe that's always looking out for what's in our highest and best good, not necessarily what our mind wants, but what's really in our highest and best good.
Mhm.
And so there's 2 ways to turn over. There's a way to turn over where you're not really turning over, you're just being dragged behind the bus. And there's another way where you hand the wheel to the bus, to the all, and that's actually exquisite. You feel like you have all the power in the universe behind you, and you feel really in alignment
Mm-hmm.
with what's happening moment to moment. Would you agree with that distinction?
I would. I probably wouldn't have put it as poetically as you. However, it makes me think of, I had a real pivotal moment a couple of years ago, just rereading The Science of Getting Rich, the Wallace D. Wattles book, and really talking about and even back then having languaging that we are basically the universe experiencing itself, and it wants us and has given us every ability to create our experience, because it wants to go through the physical, have the whole human ride, and that's what we get to provide. And we've been given the opportunity to create whatever we want, and this amazing brain that is so pliable that you truly can be whoever you want, except for the fact that if you're programmed to not believe that for all of your formative years, you will of course act in alignment with that, get results in alignment with that, and then believe that about yourself as a truth, when it's not a truth. It's just how you're wired right now.
Yes. It's important to challenge what the mind tells you. Most of us just go, yes, mind, yes, mind. We're its slave, as opposed to it being just our tool. And when we learn to take our power back and act as source, it's a very different experience, isn't it?
It is, because of so much of the way that we be on autopilot is just filled with all sorts of strange prejudices and limiting beliefs about what's possible for people like me or whatever it is, when there's so much else you could be doing with all of that mental energy. You could be you just changing your thoughts, but they run up against, they don't think about it as a belief. It's just the truth. They don't consider these limiting beliefs to be belief. It's just how it is. And look at all this evidence, without being able to see that, of course, you've attracted this evidence that this is how you be in the world. If you believe this, you will.
No, absolutely.
So it's really logical and freeing to understand that it is logical.
Right. And also what's interesting is, just to build on that point you made, we forget that we are seeing the world through the filters of our beliefs. We think we're actually seeing what's here now, and it couldn't be further from the truth. We're seeing what our filters tell us to see. And when you see through a filter, you're not really seeing what's here now. So how could you be responding appropriately? And how could you feel like yourself?
And So sorry. So
Oh,
sorry.
no, interrupt anytime.
And who are we to tell another person that their ideas or opinions are wrong? You very much alluded to this idea even in The Secret, but the essence of it is like, you've got people with such varying lenses through which they see the world that it doesn't feel like they have an opinion. This is the truth, and why can't you see it? It's like this is, I mean, it's been more evident in the past 6 7 years or so than ever before that we just see people and you go, wow, I cannot believe that you see the world like this, and they can't believe that you see the world like that, and we're just trying to figure out, and you can't change because they see a different truth, as they're right and you're right in
That's
their
right.
mind, and to suggest to them that their truth is wrong, of course they're going to fight that. And if you call them an idiot for that, they have just as much right to call you, because
Yeah.
none of
But
it's
it's also,
true.
isn't it also internal? Do we fight with ourselves? And when we're not doing this with an open heart and mind, when we see limiting beliefs, instead of going, oh, I'm glad I saw that, now I can actually do something about it, we go, God, am I stupid? Or God, am I limited? Or I should be further along. And all this other self-talk,
Yes.
where, so not only are we at war with apparent others, we're at war with ourselves, thinking, I've been working on myself for decades. How could I
Wow.
actually even entertain a thought like this? Because it came up. So what? It's
It,
something to let go of.
it's so funny to hear you say, because I mean it's like you're speaking my words. I used that exact example. It's like, anyway, we're just totally in agreement there.
Yes, we are. What a shock! What a shock! So,
But yes, the way that people talk to themselves, it just perpetuates, and they want to be right. That part of them wants to be right, and so they can argue for their limitations all day long. And then they have that little chemical reaction that says, "Oh, it feels good to be right," but they also have to. They're also immersed in that chemical that just feels terrible and limiting, and shows and gives them no possibility to change that. Again, the chemistry of this is, it's highly addicting. And
yes,
again, if we can become conscious of that and say, oh, you know what, I'm feeling this way. This emotion is a chemical that I've created because I made this meaning out of something. What different meaning could I make? Now, that's so much easier said than done in the moment, especially, as you know, but that's when the Sedona method comes in, or whatever,
right.
so that you can become aware, get present again. Because once you know that you have this choice, once you know, you can't unknow it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Although, so I've seen some people try, but
They try, right, but they can't. They know that they have a choice,
yes.
but they're just not willing to do it.
No, that's
Yeah.
absolutely true. So, one of the things you've been studying as a tool to help others with this is neuroplasticity.
Mhm.
For those of us who don't know what that is, can you explain that and
Yeah,
how it relates to this conversation?
sure. Basically, it's just our brain's ability to change. That's really all you need to know, is that as you learned new things growing up, in your brain created physical neural pathways that kind of held up that information. As you learn, new things grow, and as you use them, they get stronger, and as you stop using them, they will wither away. And this is how we evolve throughout the course of our lives. I mean, we've all been different versions of ourselves as we grew up. I mean, I look back on my 30s and go, how could I ever have been that way? How could I ever have rationalized life that way? But that's just how I was wired at that time. But as different life experiences came in, and I got different opinions, and as I matured, my wiring changed. And so I had different predominant thoughts, and those old neural pathways died off. And that's why it seems like, how could I possibly have been that way? That's how disassociated we can become. That's how powerful that kind of reprogramming is. And so when we are wired this way, we're neuroplastic, but if we keep telling ourselves the same thing over and over again, no new information, well, we're just kind of holding, there's nothing really new growing. But
Right.
when we start, if we want, and so we're going to be basically at the mercy of that and all of its programs. But if we can become conscious about changing the predominant thought, we learn that way. Just like we learned, nothing's different, except that we're being conscious about it and can accelerate it with our consciousness and our ability to amp up our emotion using our imagination, and with tools that can help us get past the resistance, the inevitable resistance piece of this so much faster. So it's a great time to be taking this on.
Yeah, it is. If you look around the world, people aren't as happy maybe as they could be.
No, they're not.
And that, yeah, that doesn't even matter. I mean, there some people are actually prospering because of the pandemic, but still there's just so much stress and tension and anxiety and focus on the negative aspects of what this is.
Mhm.
And we forget that every time we get a challenge, it comes with an opportunity
Yeah. If we take it.
if
And,
we
and,
take it right.
and that all comes from a belief that the universe, if you will, is for us. So that everything that comes our way is there for a reason that we may or may not ever understand, but it's an important part of where we have projected ourselves going. To get where you want to go, there are probably all sorts of lessons you need to learn. Some of them are going to suck, but it's the only way that you'll be able to get into alignment with being that person. It's not just, you don't magically transport this exact being into this new future. No, that's not how it works, because you wouldn't be in alignment with it and it would fall away. So you have to truly become that person first.
Yeah, yeah, change happens from the inside out.
Mhm.
From the
You can
inside
try
out.
to force it from the outside in, but then you will find yourself being unhappy and maybe even more unhappy because you thought all this time, oh wait, I thought this was going to do it and it didn't. So now what? Now there's just no hope because they're totally seeking it from the outside. And that's one of the things, that's one of the unfortunate things that people were saying they got from The Secret, which that's one of those films where you see what you want to see, that in alignment, again, what we talked about, they're looking for through a different lens. So people will say, oh, it was all about money or it was all about whatever. But they left out, there's just things they didn't see and certain distinctions, but now I can't remember what I was going to say with that, but
It
just
doesn't
extrapolate
matter.
brilliant. Something brilliant would come out of that.
Oh, well, even that was brilliant.
Okay, good. It may pop into my head, but
I
sorry
never
about
worry
that.
about stuff like that. If
Okay.
if it disappears, it means it was supposed to disappear, and it will come back if it's supposed to.
All right. Everybody could fill in the blanks anyway, probably.
They could. They are. So, what are some of the things, tools or tips or suggestions you give people when they've been listening to you so far? They're going, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Mhm.
So, how do I engage in this? What do I do about it? How do I rise to this challenge?
So for me, it is practicing that tool of becoming aware. So that now that anybody has heard our conversation, they should have gotten by now that in any kind of emotional response, whether it's good or bad or whatever, it's due to some sort of programming. It's some wiring. You're making meaning out of a situation that is could come from a gazillion experiences in your life, and in that moment you give it meaning, and then that's your experience. So now that you know that, if you are in an experience that is this common thing that upsets you, you can be on the lookout now and go and just feel, okay, I am reacting right now. Now, whether you have the ability to go totally conscious and just look at it and detach from the emotion in that moment, that would be great if you could do that the first time out. So let's visualize it, but also know that that's a lot easier said than done, because chemistry is going through your body. Once you have that response, chemistry goes, and it's going to have to burn off. It's going to have to metabolize. So, but you can stay as aware as you can, as that you are about to make a choice in this moment for a reaction outside or in. So being on the lookout for that is the first step. And then seeing if you can actually assess, what would I rather do in this moment? What would the ideal version of me do in this moment that is different than my primary reaction? And the good thing about that is that's something you can rehearse ahead of time. So if there are common things in your life that upset you during the course of a day, you could wake up in the morning and go, boy, I'm dreading this. Whatever thoughts are going on in your mind about a situation where you feel anxious, you can visualize it ahead of time and run through it in a way where you don't get reacted. Like, what would that look like? You get to rehearse it and rehearse it and rehearse it and rehearse it, so that when that moment comes, you could actually try it on if you wanted to, because you're already ready for it. And the only way to truly walk into, the quickest way to truly being the person who would do that is just to do it, because that's where you may stumble or fall or get a reaction you don't want, but you've taken that step. If you don't take that step, you'll never get there. So being able to rehearse it and seeing yourself going through it confidently, no matter what their response is, that's a real thing. I mean, visualization is a real thing, and it can really help you to act differently in the moment. So that's just a couple of things that people could try on over the next couple of days or so. But it's just about practices of being conscious and then making different choices, just on even the lightest scale.
Mhm. It doesn't really matter what they pick. I assume you're suggesting they exercise
Yes.
this natural ability they have
Right.
inside to just choose to be more conscious and make more conscious choices.
Yes. And just know that it's going to feel weird at first, and you may just toss it right out. Your mind can tell you a million reasons why you shouldn't spend your time doing that. But I'm telling you, it is the way. You have to become aware. You have, if you're going to do this consciously and get very intentional, you got to be clear on who you're going to be. And it doesn't happen magically because something gets to you. The something comes to you because you become that new version. And then so you take different action and you get different results. It's all real physical stuff. It's not even woo-woo. It just makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like that you're keeping this practical.
Keep it real.
Keep it real.
Hey,
'Cause I mean,
I'm all about the woo-woo, right? But after 20 years of doing this, I was realizing that trying to talk about vibration and energy and all of that stuff, while some people love it and they embrace it and they go, I totally get that, I totally believe it, they still have a ridiculous time integrating it. And they tried this technique and that, but it still comes down to who they've defined themselves to be. So as a coach, I can look and say, you're never going to get the results with this mindset, with this approach to it. You're setting yourself up for failure. And I see it. I'm sure you do too. These people who, I've been studying the law of attraction, I love it, 20 years and I'm still broke, or whatever it is. It's like, there's something here. But everyone, well, most everyone, statistically more people, I can point at the science of neuroplasticity, which is not up for debate. It's there, it's provable. I don't have to deal with non-believers and say, this is what's happening. This is where it really happens. And it's really just simple. You just need to send it new information, and your mind is set up to do it. And so my work now is helping people through that discomfort phase so that they realize that A, it's normal, which will hopefully make it a little less uncomfortable.
yes, sure.
And knowing those areas of resistance, knowing those points that they normally would beat themselves up for, as we alluded to, it's really your greatest gift. You just get, oh, yay, I found another thing that I can now release so that it doesn't have to keep showing up like this and this and this and this. And so it's just that shift in awareness and the idea that everything is for you instead of, you're at the reaction all the time. It just changes everything.
Yeah, it does. It really does. It really does. And what's nice is that I'm glad we're keeping this very non-woo-woo, but at the same time, if you have your woo-woo version, again, I don't really see spirituality as woo-woo. I actually see it as way more real and practical and available that sometimes than the things that people think are the most practical and solid and all that other kinds of things. Because in my experience, this presence of awareness or beingness or isness that we are at our core that gives life to every experience, that's what's primary. Everything else comes from that, is secondary. And so it's nice occasionally to pay attention to what's primary, because in doing that, when you go back into the practical, you're coming more and more from source. Would you agree with that?
Yes. And you reminded me of going through The Greatest Secret and then the focus on awareness. It really had me check back in with, I had a nice little cascade of ahas and all of that after going through that book, because it reframed awareness. And that when I think about my childhood memories,
yes,
it was just me remembering these things. It wasn't a 4-year-old. It wasn't a 3-year-old. Same with my teenage. It's like, it's not a personality per se, but it's something that's consistent. Like,
yes.
And that was like, wow, and I never had thought about that before, really. But it really made me check in with that. My awareness is just observing this physical experience that I'm creating.
Right.
And so that also tapped it. It also, it was very empowering too, that to think that, I am calling a lot of shots here that I'm not taking responsibility for or advantage of, where I'm letting certain things run on autopilot, and this is how it's showing up. And I get to just watch and not judge and just say, well, look at, you got yourself into this mess. Let's see what you do with this, that kind of stuff. Like,
right.
That awareness is so non-judgmental, and it's beyond that human experience. And that it was a big takeaway from going through The Greatest Secret.
Yeah, no, it's one of the important takeaways, I believe, is that most of us identify with the story, with our body, our mind, our suffering, and our limitation, as opposed to that presence of awareness that without which there could be no experience. And when you start to pay more attention to that which is aware, you feel more empowered, you feel more alive, you feel more centered, you feel more whole. And all the things that you're looking for outside of yourself just become available to you directly from within, which actually empowers you to be more effective in life. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, that was the empowerment that I was talking about. It's just like this big picture, like I'm not at this experience, this awareness, who is somehow part of this experience, even if in observation mode, has the ability to direct, I guess. I don't know. It was very, very empowering because from a wiring point of view, like my brain is still a part of this equation. And so my awareness gets to watch my brain do its thing, right? And just like play out however. But now from this vantage point of awareness, it feels like I can make a different choice about where this brain goes. It's not Bob in his ego form trying to get his brain to do something. It's the awareness making a decision. Now let's go this way. Uh-huh. It just feels a lot easier and it flows better because it's coming from a completely different, where there's no rules about ego and limitation and any of that small stuff. And it's really cool to be able to just tap into that for even just a few moments.
Yes,
and
yes.
To observe us being just human.
Yes, yes. I mean, again, in my experience, the human experience is sacred. It's an exquisite honor and a gift. And so I feel grateful every day for the gift of just being.
Yeah. Obviously, not everybody sees it that way, and they feel like they're a victim of the circumstances of the world and find it hard to tune into that level of distinction. And so if there's anything that, we can do, and the type of work that we do is to give the people that awareness, to somehow open them up to the miracle that they are, even though that may sound however it may sound.
Yes.
But it really is. Well, like what you were just saying, it is such we get to do this. We get to have this experience. And again, that goes right back to the Science of Getting Rich and some of the great principles I took from that. I just highly recommend revisiting that. Even in lieu of this conversation, because it takes the whole idea of that you have to deserve this or worthiness totally out of it.
Right.
Which is a man-made thing anyway.
That's totally. It's an imaginary limitation.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you can get that it just doesn't apply, not just because we're saying that, but when you really understand why we're here, as it is described in the book, and it makes a lot of sense to me, then you'll understand why you don't have to deserve this. The fact that you are is enough to know that, okay, well, if you're here to create something that's amazing. And you've got all the tools you need. And there's going to be challenges. And, but the good news is you get to have vision. You get to change your circuit. So it's an amazing experience that people do take for granted because they're just looking at the wrong things.
Right. We're, I think this is an Einstein quote. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, most of us are quite insane. And another amazing Einstein quote is, you can't solve whatever problem you're dealing with at the level it was created.
Yes.
And most of our problems are created at the level of mind, aren't they?
This is exactly why I tell people that when they are learning about the law of attraction or whatever, after they see The Secret, that, if they go after immediately, what's all the stuff I want, without first deciding who they're going to be in that, it's going to be a rougher ride.
Yeah.
You want to know what is this happy, empowered version of you look like, because guess what? They'll want things, probably different things, and for a different reason, not out of pain, not out of trying to fix a problem, but because they are expansive beings and they want to have these experiences and they believe that these things will bring them those emotions and that experience. It's just the same brain is capable of going off in both of those directions. It can either be completely creative and expansive or just get stuck or atrophy even. next time you feel it, that familiar thing where you go, oh, not again.
Right.
That's when I invite you to go, at least for the moment and to the extent that you can, say, okay, I'm in autopilot mode right now. I mean, I feel like I cannot control this. Like this is the only possible way for me to be, but it is programming. If you can just get that far and own that a few times in a row, and then maybe try on like, well, what would it be like? And then you could go home that evening and rehearse a different way of responding, a different way of feeling. It's going to be weird, but just imagine it. Let your imagination go crazy. And then you'll create a little bit, the neurotransmitters will start to shoot out there. And then when you reinforce, then they actually grow into a thing. But you get to do that.
So anything else you want to add?
If you can just get that reality is created in the moment that you give it meaning. I mean, that's because truly we're in this ocean of stuff that's happening. They're all just events and they are meaningless until we say they have meaning. That's just the reality of how things are. And if you look at why do you make meaning out of anything, it is your wiring. So if you want a different experience of life, meaning you can make different or more positive meanings out of situations that currently you feel like you're powerless in, if you can create that, then your brain itself can change and you will learn to become different in the world and you will get different results. I'm just really restating the basics here, but just the same processes that made you the person that you are today are the ones that will change who you are in the future. Only you just get to be way more intentional about it and take years off of it.
Yes, I think that's the key, isn't it? We do so much in life unconsciously. The more we can make things conscious, the more we are taking charge of our experience.
Absolutely.
I hope you enjoyed our time with Bob Doyle. You can learn more about him, his book, Follow Your Passion, Find Your Power, in the program notes or by going to his website, meetbobdoyle.com. That's easy to remember, meetbobdoyle.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, and share it with the people you care about. These episodes are dedicated to sharing the eternal teachings from the greatest secret and the power of letting go. As Rhonda said, we've missed the truth for thousands of years because we've not looked at what's right in front of us. We become easily distracted by our problems, the drama in our lives, and the comings and goings of the events in the world, and we miss the greatest discovery we can make, a discovery that can take us out of suffering and into lasting bliss and happiness. If you'd like to learn more about my work, my mentors, Lester Levinson's work, and the Sedona Method, please visit sedona.com. As you explore our site, you'll learn the key to lasting happiness, success, peace, and emotional well-being. We have books, courses, events, and plenty of free material to explore. Again, go to sedona.com. That's sedona.com. Thank you for being here, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Letting Go and the Greatest Secret.